3,200 times this month, people have typed into Google, what is a wife entitled to in a Texas divorce? So this is something that clearly is on a bunch of people's minds. And based on that search term, it would be easy to presume that you have a bunch of wives who are saying, hey, what can I get in a divorce? But you could also have husbands who are saying, hey, if I get a divorce, what's my wife entitled to? The easy answer is, wife is entitled to a just and right division of the marital estate and a parenting plan that's in the child's best interest. That's what the wife is entitled to. So when you get into the specifics, what does that mean? A lot of wives are really focused on making sure they can protect the children and provide a safe home for the children, which means they often want to be the primary parent. They also want financial security. I find that they often want to keep the marital residence because it keeps the kids in the same school and the kids can stay in their room. It provides an additional layer of stability for the children. And then the third thing is any other financial aspect that will help keep them safe and secure. So we talk about child support, which is for the children. It's not wife support. It's not ex-wife support. It's child support, but it's money that comes into the household. Those are the biggest things that we see wife request. We ask, what are your 3 goals? What are your biggest priorities in this case? And these are the 3 that we get the most when wives come in to talk about a divorce. On the other side, we have what do the men actually want? What men typically want is plenty of access to their children, and frequently these days they'll say, I want a 50-50 split with my kids. I want my kids at least half the time. And then the other part is they don't want to be crushed financially. So they understand they're probably going to have to pay some child support, but they don't want to be crushed financially. So they want to be able to live their life without all of their money being taken by their ex-wife, either through child support or through some other asset. So when women say, what's a wife entitled to in Texas? The wife is entitled to a just and right division of the community estate, which means a fair share of the assets of the parties, including potentially some money that comes to her after the divorce. It also includes a best interest parenting plan where the wife may also receive child support if she becomes the primary parent. What is a wife entitled to? She's entitled to the same thing a husband's entitled to, a parenting plan that's in the child's best interest. What people actually want typically is different between what wives actually want and what husbands say they want when they answer our questions, but what they're entitled to is exactly the same. Texas is not an alimony state, so a wife who files for a divorce in Texas has to understand that it's very likely that she's not going to get any kind of money from the husband after the divorce is over, except for child support. If there are kids involved and the mother becomes the primary parent, there could be child support that follows. But as far as alimony, Texas doesn't have alimony. Texas does have something similar. It's called post-divorce spousal maintenance. The big difference between post-divorce spousal maintenance and alimony is that spousal maintenance runs for a limited amount of time. It's kind of hard to qualify for post-divorce spousal maintenance. The policy of the state of Texas is a spouse who gets divorced probably should not get spousal maintenance after the divorce. Texas doesn't like it when 2 people were married, now we get divorced, but one of them still has their hand out to the other needing that money to help me survive. If you're going to get a divorce, Texas wants to sever those ties. The expectation from the state is when you get a divorce, y'all are done doing business together. Now, we may have to hang out together for the kids, but as spouses, we don't have to interact anymore. That's the dream in the family code. There's an analysis in the family code about whether a wife is entitled to spousal maintenance, and if so, can the husband afford to pay it? Generally speaking, you don't count on spousal maintenance. So when people come into our office, when wives come into our office and they say, hey, what about getting alimony after? We have to temper their expectations and just let them know it's very unlikely. It's easier to predict that you're not going to get spousal support during a divorce. A question we get a lot is whether the wife always becomes the primary parent for the children. We get that question actually from the men most. I think a lot of women come in just with the expectation that she's the mom and therefore she's going to be the primary parent. The answer is no. In the family code, it has a provision that says when the court assigns, which parent is the primary parent, the court is not allowed to look at the plumbing of the parties, right? We can't look at the male or female as to which one would be the primary parent. What we look at is a number of factors like who historically has been the primary caregiver. If you've got an 80-hour-a-week mom while dad's been a stay-at-home dad, dad has been the primary caregiver. That gives the nod to dad in that regard. Has one of the parties been abusive? Have they been good co-parents? Have both parties been to all the school events? Have both parties taken the kids to the doctor? Both parties know who the pediatrician is. Dad coaches the t-ball team. Mom is taking the kids to cheer practice. You can have a situation where both parties are equally engaged, and in those cases, the party that's the most likely to foster the relationship with the other parent is the deciding factor for the court. So it's entirely possible that men could be the primary parent. We do that for folks fairly regularly. These days, there's a lot more 50-50 possession that the parties will agree to. No, it's not always the mom who's the de facto primary parent. If mom has been a stay-at-home parent, mom's taking the kids to all the doctor's appointments. Mom takes the kids to school every morning and picks them up every afternoon. Mom's making the meals. Dad is out there providing, bringing home the bacon, and he loves the kids and he plays with them when he gets home and he reads to them at night. But mom is that primary caregiver. When we get to court later and dad says, I want to be the primary parent, the court asks, how can you be the primary parent with your 70-hour-a-week job? Mom has historically been the primary parent. This is what is going to be most consistent for the children. So if you're a dad who's wanting to be a good 50-50 parent, or you potentially want that primary possession of the children and a divorce or custody case is on the horizon, you need to get engaged in your kid's life. You need to know who their doctors are. You need to go to those doctor's appointments. You need to go and meet with the school and become friends with those teachers. You need to be emailing the teachers and have that ongoing relationship for the child's educational benefit. I'm not saying that you go and do these things so that you can be a more effective litigant later. What I'm saying is be the best parent you can be. Be the most engaged parent you can be. You can't defer the day-to-day parenting to your spouse and then when you file a divorce, magically come in and want to be super parent and be the primary parent, right? That's not going to work for you. If a divorce is on the horizon, part of the infrastructure for setting up the life you want to live is going to be building that engagement with the kids, being involved so that she can't stand there in court and say that you never do anything for the kids, right? That's how you got to build your case. And in this case, building your case means having that great time with your kids and being the best dad you can be. Stay-at-home parents are some of our most intense clients. There's a number of reasons why, but it really all comes down to the fact that if we were to finish the divorce today, the stay-at-home parent just completely unprepared to provide for his or herself. Most of the stay-at-home parents that we come across are moms. It's pretty rare that there's a dad who's a stay-at-home parent. So when we talk about a stay-at-home parent, it's almost always code for a stay-at-home mom. And a stay-at-home mom faces numerous challenges in a divorce. So they do have some advantage as to the children. The stay-at-home mom has always been the primary caregiver for the children, making all the meals. The mom has always been actively mothering the children on a day-to-day basis, everything from food and hygiene all the way up to school activities, while the dad has been providing the household. But for dad's hard work and all the money dad makes, mom would also have to work and she wouldn't have the ability to be the stay-at-home parent. So what happens is when it's time for a stay-at-home parent to get divorced, they're not self-sufficient. Imagine trying to enter this job market with no work history for the last 10 years? What skills do you have that you could bring to work for an employer? What kind of job do you think you're going to get? If you're not self-sufficient, when you get a divorce, how are you going to keep the house? How are you going to pay the mortgage? How are you going to pay for rent in an apartment? When we talk about challenges that a stay-at-home spouse faces, a lot of it is based almost exclusively on the financial aspects of the reality of a decade of being a stay-at-home mom. We often find that stay-at-home moms may have a bachelor's degree, but it's 10 or 12 years old and they haven't worked in that field. So it's all but useless. They don't have experience in the corporate workplace. They don't have sales experience. They don't qualify for almost any employer. So what's the trick? The trick is there's no substitute for being self-sufficient. My advice, based on what I have seen here in our office, working hundreds of divorces over a decade, once the kids go to kindergarten, I recommend moms go get a job. Maybe it's a part-time job, so you can still take the kids to school in the morning, you pick the kids up in the afternoon, but moms go get a job and start working and building some work history. When you can, move into a full-time position and grow your career. Start promoting, get into a job that has upward mobility as part of the work culture. Find what you like and go do it, and do it for a living so you can bring money on into the household. That's going to be my strong advice, because if a divorce ever happens, if a divorce is on the horizon, you for sure need a job. But even if divorce is not on the horizon, what's the harm in being self-sufficient? What if your husband got hit by a bus today, God forbid? How would you provide for the family without his income? Please become self-sufficient. Certainly when you come into a divorce, it puts you in a much more desperate place if you have to fight for custody because you can't live without child support. You have to fight for the house and everything. You've got to fight, and ruin a co-parenting relationship because you can't afford to live and you don't have any work history, so you can't even go get an apartment because you don't have check stubs to show the apartment you can pay or the lease. So my strong advice is get self-sufficient. It's safer in case the other spouse is somehow injured or gets sick and can't work, but certainly in the case of a divorce, being self-sufficient can make all the difference for you in your life. And imagine trying to be the primary parent and you can't afford to live, you don't have a place to go. That gives the nod to dad. So imagine now you're not the primary parent just because you can't afford to live. Get a job as soon as you can. The stay-at-home mom thing works great until it doesn't.